Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time. You're watching ERX Text Talk live on Eswatini TV. As Eswatini's business community enters one of the most decisive compliance windows of the year, all eyes turn to the clock and to the commitments that underpin a modern and accountable economy. And today, we are going to unpack a critical conversation, the final stretch for annual income tax returns, as well as the pivotal role of provisional tax in sustaining national revenue stability and business credibility. Deadlines are imminent, obligations are clear, and the cost of getting this wrong or leaving it too late is simply too high. We want to understand what does every business, large, small, incorporated, or sole trader need to do right, and how is the digital shift through tax is redefining compliance culture in Eswatini. The Eswatini Revenue Services Manager of Taxpayer Education and Information, Nkosi Mahlalela, and Manager of Marketing and Communications, Nduduzo Dlamini, are going to help us navigate the essentials as well as make sense of what responsible tax participation looks like today. That is going to come to you on the show today after we enjoy our business news. So let's kickstart everything by looking at the business news that define the day. In our story, the Minister for Finance, Honorable Neil Reichenberg, has urged countries in Southern Africa to use the 31st Intergovernmental Committee of senior officials as well as experts, popularly known as the ICSOE for Southern Africa, to find solutions to close the over 857 million financing gap for small and medium enterprises and young entrepreneurs in Africa. The minister also said that participants in the meetings should find ways to improve how Africa processes its commodities to enhance market competitiveness, as unprocessed commodities in the continent remain at 70%.
The session's theme is Unlocking of African Continental Free Trade Area's Potential, Building Value Chains and Overcoming Barriers to Trade in Southern Africa. The Minister for Finance, Honorable Neil Reichenberg, says countries should make the right strategies to reap the full benefits of the agreement.
The AfCFTA represents one of the most transformative development opportunities for our continent. A single market of 1.4 billion people with a combined turnover of $3.4 trillion US. For Southern Africa, realizing this potential requires that we move beyond dependence on raw commodity exports and instead build strong, interconnected, regional value chains that enable value addition, beneficiation, and industrialization. Today, over 70% of our exports remain unprocessed commodities. Our region processes less than 5% of its copper locally, despite holding nearly 60% of Africa's total output. These figures remind us that the promise of the AfCFTA can only be fulfilled when we convert our advantages in resources to a competitive advantage in production.
United Nations Resident Coordinator George Washira shares the key elements necessary to make the agreement work.
We need the energy, we need the skills, we need the expertise, we need the environment for investments. We need to facilitate our private sectors. We need beneficiation of our products. We need the technological innovations. How are we lining this all together? Alongside the idea of a whole of government approach to ensure that everything is running smoothly across government.
Eunice Kamwendo, Director of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, says the region should heavily invest in energy as it plays a crucial role in trade and attracting foreign direct investment.
As a region, we're really facing crippling energy deficits from South Africa, the rolling blackouts that we're having, to Zambia, where we're going as much as 21 hours a day without power. Similar challenges in Zimbabwe, Malawi, and others that we felt we couldn't actually grow economically without energy.
The United Nations Resident Coordinator, George Wachira, has shared that manufacturing in the country accounts for 80% of Eswatini's total exports, above continental average. He states that this positions the country as a potential regional production hub within SACU and SADC. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla for Minkosi Nzinisa, Ezulwini.
Well, the European Union, through the International Trade Center, has promised to scale up efforts to boost Eswatini's trade in European Union countries. This was shared by Ambassador Carsten Marklenberg, and this was during the official handover of the Trade Initiative of the Year Award and certificate handover for the Training of Trainers program. It was at Mountain View in Mbabane.
To do so, programs that support the government, the Eswatini Investment Promotion Agency, in their efforts to improve, to create a better environment for business, for investment, but also for export in particular.
European Union Ambassador Carsten Marklenberg says they have assisted Eswatini in a number of initiatives to boost exports, sharing that over 17 businesses have benefited from the different initiatives.
Our objective is to be an export-led economy, and the EU and ITC have really supported us on a program around market analysis tools. We know that as we move into a period of...
Locally, the International Trade Center supports job creation, particularly for small farmers, entrepreneurs, and artisans, by strengthening the private sector's competitiveness and helping connect them to international markets through the support of the European Union. The European Union does this through the Promoting Growth Through Competitive Alliances program, which focuses on sustainable agriculture, value addition, and leveraging trade agreements like the EU-SADC Economic Partnership Agreement. Reporting, Nelson Dlangamandla, Mbabane.
All right, that marks the end of our business news. We'll go for a net break. We come back with our Tax Talk session.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. As we approach the end of the month of October, let's turn our attention now to a critical subject for the business community: annual income tax return filing for 2025 year of assessment, the importance of provisional tax compliance. The deadline for filing income tax returns for businesses is fast approaching, and today we will be discussing important reminders for taxpayers' obligations. And we'll also touch on provisional tax compliance. So joining us now, representatives from the ERS. They're going to provide expert insights as well as the answers that you need. Manager Taxpayer Education and Information, as well as Nduduzo Dlamini, that side, Manager Marketing and Communications. Good afternoon to the both of you.
Good afternoon.
Guys doing good?
Yeah,
Very
great,
well.
great.
You've been making headlines this week, haven't you?
For all the good reasons.
For all the good reasons, indeed. Let's talk about the deadline for annual income tax returns. It's almost here, right? What should taxpayers keep in mind?
All right, thanks, Fiso, and good afternoon to the viewers. We've just started the countdown. In fact, it has started. If you've been noticing, we've been talking about the filing season for the whole month. So the first deadline is approaching tomorrow. which is 31 October, where we are focusing on businesses. When we talk about businesses, we talk about non-registered VAT businesses or VAT-registered businesses. This also includes companies, trustees, and entities. So from those, they should file and pay tomorrow, which is very important that they file and pay tomorrow. And then also just to remind them that we use our Tax Easy portal, which they will use to file, and they can access it on our website, or they can download our TaxPal app to file and pay tomorrow.
Right. We have heard a lot about provisional tax lately. Why is that important?
Good afternoon, Goni, once again. Good afternoon to our viewers as well. So yes, provisional tax. In Eswatini, we refer to provisional tax as sibekela mthelo. It actually eases the burden of you paying a lump sum when you eventually file your annual income tax return.
Yeah.
So provisional tax is a very key compliance requirement for most of our clients, including companies, company directors, as well as sole traders. In fact, for the year 2025 income tax filing process, we'd like to ensure, or rather remind our clients to ensure that both their first and second provisional tax obligations are filed and paid before they can upload or file their income tax, or rather annual income tax return. In actual fact, the second provisional tax estimate is a prerequisite for uploading or filing your annual income tax return. So if you haven't attended to your second installment, please ensure that you do that, because unfortunately Tax Easy is going to block you from filing your annual income tax return. Please reach out so we can assist you on how to go about it. Actually, we've been receiving calls and emails, people thinking maybe there's a problem with the system. There's everything okay with the system. It's just that you forgot to attend to your second provisional tax obligation. Hence, it is now blocking you from uploading your annual income tax return. Please attend to your second provisional tax estimate so that you'll be able to go ahead and file your annual income tax return. It's very important, and we're here to assist you in all our platforms. We are readily available to handhold you and help you on how to go about.
Yeah, and perhaps an opportunity to highlight some key specifications from the 2025 filing notice.
Yeah, so I think that the first one there is that anyone who's earned income this year should file their tax income. And then secondly, the deadline for businesses is tomorrow, so which they need to also file and pay using the Tax Easy portal. And then thirdly is to just remind them that in terms of businesses, the tax is 25%, and then for presumptive tax, it's 1.75% turnover. And then lastly is to just remind them that our means of payment is through, we don't take cash, but you can visit our service centers. We do take EFT, we do take Momo, and if you do visit us, we will only use your cards for you to pay. For those who want to get our banking details, they're also available on our website or our TaxPal app.
Yeah. Klebo, I know how passionate you are about this topic, so I want to put you on the spot to talk to the viewers at home and your clients, really. Just motivate them, just tell them the importance of doing what they're supposed to do.
It's very important. I'd like to encourage everyone to do what needs to be done, to do their part, play their part. ERS is there to support. Otherwise, tax compliance remains an obligation for all our clients. I'd like to encourage everyone who's supposed to be filing their income tax return to exercise diligence and accuracy before they upload their return, to ensure that there are no errors and as well as omissions. And I'd also like to talk to all VAT registered clients who might have missed the recent deadline for filing their monthly schedule, which was the due date was 27 October, just a few days ago. If you happen to have missed that deadline, it's still open. Please go ahead and upload your schedules and make the payment that's supposed to be done. And we also want to encourage generally and just say, please ensure that you do things on time to avoid penalties. You can avoid penalties. I mean, you need to pay tax, but you can avoid penalties and interest by doing things on time. ERS is available to support you to ensure that you do things on time.
It's important because, the same iterations were reiterated by the Minister for Finance and the Commissioner General yesterday.
Yes.
The very, that emphasis can never be said enough.
Yeah.
But maybe introduce as we close the last words from the comms perspective.
I think the key one is the reminder, which is tomorrow. Should you need any assistance, they could email us at info@ers.org.sz, or they can use our website at www.ers.org.sz, or they can visit our service centers, or they can even download our TaxPal app or use the website to get all those information. Otherwise, we are happy to assist them as they file and pay for their income tax.
Thank you so much to the both of you, viewers at home. And that's it. When we talk taxpayer obligations as well as compliance, this is exactly what we are talking about. So do your part. We have our economist after the break to close the show. Don't go anywhere.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Market analysis now, your favorite part of the program. We have Sanele Sbia, our economist, who's going to help us understand the numbers today. Sanele, good afternoon. Please take center stage.
Good afternoon to the viewer. So today we're looking at markets which are showing a bit of a subdued activity. That's owing to quite a multiplicity of factors which include President Trump's current visit into Asia, and also if you look at what is happening in that conference in Korea, in South Korea. So what we're seeing here is, markets are somehow reacting to they're actually reacting to what we're seeing happening in terms of the interest rates. We've seen the Fed's cut down on the interest rates, but what we are also seeing is that taking into cognizance the fact that we still in that government shutdown position. So those are the positions we're seeing in the markets in the US today. So we're seeing the Dow Jones Industrial Average closing a bit lower at 74. and that S&P 500 closing lower at 0.3 points, basically flatlining, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite Index continuing to rise, given the fact that we are still on earnings season. So what this means, Numalo, is it's on the backdrop of those talks that we've seen coming through from the Feds, where they said we are cutting down the interest rates, but we are on a bit of a blind. When they said we're flying blind, those are the exact words that Fed Chair actually used, because there is still that government shutdown, and we are not getting the right figures in terms of the jobs market data. And then also when you look at that Asia economic conference that is ongoing, we are seeing that there are a bit of talks, right, around how we stabilize the trade relations between the US and China. But what we are not seeing is really what is it on the ground. I mean, if you hear President Trump, he'll always use words like amazing, those big words that are showing us signs of something big in the positive direction. But what markets are looking into is we are not seeing that something big in the positive direction. We're just waiting for a clearly defined trade relation between China and the US. But what we keep seeing is just those talks on talks and then talks on talks, but nothing concrete yet. So that's why we're seeing markets doing those movements in the US. And then when you come into the European markets, there are still those fears around the inflation, and then also the fact that we're not seeing a clearly defined path out of easing this trade war or coming up with trade peace between China and the US. Now, that has taken away the sentiment or that expectation which we would have likely seen with the cut in the interest rate. Would have expected the markets to start rallying on the red, because now that we have been breathing some life into markets. But the fact that we are flying blind and nobody really knows what the jobs data is, and nobody even knows whether the decision that the Feds have taken is the right one, because we've not seen any of those statistics ever since this government shutdown in the US started. So markets are a bit somehow just trying to understand those dynamics and what it means for the world. And then when you go into Asia, we're seeing Asian markets, holding steady relatively at those all high levels, just like the rest of the markets. But the fact that we are not seeing a clear trade deal coming out between the US and also China, now that has actually subdued markets a bit. And if you look now, it's only the Nikkei there that is still holding steady and posting some 17 points in today's trade, which is basically a flat line at 0.04%. Now, that is driven by the fact that we know that there is a trade deal between the US and Japan. It's clear, we know there's a trade deal, but the one main lever that the world is looking for is, can Trump deliver the trade deal between the US and China beyond those adjectives that he uses. We're going to come up with something amazing. The markets have had that quite a lot, but what now the markets need to see is that amazing, and that amazing starts with a clearly defined trade deal between China and the US, and the escalation of all economic hostilities between these two global superpowers. So now that has actually resulted in subdued market activity when you go into the Hang Seng region and also in the Shanghai Composite in Shanghai within mainland China. But we are still looking at the Shanghai Composite Index driving up to that 4,000 mark probably in the next week or the next couple of weeks. So we should see that, once markets have moved from this phase and we get a clear direction of where those trade talks are going to go, the trade talks between the US and China. And then when you're coming into South African markets, you will realize that there has been a bit of some losses. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange has actually lost 793 points in today's trade. But what we are seeing there is the fact that the China-US trade talks seem to weigh heavily on markets, purely because South Africa has been removed from that grey list by the economic, by the financial, by the task force on economy and on financial transfers and counterterrorism, right? So would have expected to see the Johannesburg Stock Exchange rallying on that, more especially the financials. But the fact that we are seeing that those trade talks not really giving us what we're looking for, therefore you'd see that overall market activity in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange has been subdued. And then you couple that with a weaker gold base. Gold has actually gone back to that 3,998 mark. But what is quite interesting about that is we are seeing gold moving a bit up, closer back to that 4,000 mark, which is something that's a bit higher than what we saw on Wednesday, largely because the Feds have introduced this level of uncertainty, saying we are flying blind, and the fact that China-US trade relations still seems uncertain, which was what we expected was going to actually subdue the gold market with that downward cut in interest rates. But what we're seeing is the opposite. That shows that it is those China-US talks that are weighing heavily on markets. And then when you look at the price of Brent crude, we're seeing Brent crude climbing down to 63.93 per dollar. Barrels per dollar. Now recall that the US is now in the process of beginning nuclear tests, which is yet another point of uncertainty in the market that says we are seeing the US, championing themselves as the peacetime type of US right now. But there you go now, testing weapons. So now the markets are somehow trying to understand where that is going to go in terms of geopolitical uncertainties, because when the president of the free world comes out to say we are looking at matching Russia 1-to-1 in terms of our nuclear in terms of our nuclear arsenal. Now, that doesn't bode well with markets because it somehow speaks to straining geopolitical relations. And then when you look into the Lilangeni against all major currencies, we're seeing that, Japan's, with that election of the new prime minister, it seems that the Japanese yen is stabilizing, but relatively weaker across against major currencies, because there are those debt, those property issues, and those debt issues, and the negative interest rate that needs to be taken into consideration. And then when you look against the dollar, you would expect that we would have gained a bit of strength. Yes, on a day-to-day trade, you can see that the Lilangeni has strengthened, but today, as the trading session continued, we saw the Lilangeni was was depreciating against both the dollar and the euro. Thank you, Mr. Ngumalo.
Thank you, Mr. Spear. Really appreciate your insights. Thank you for staying with us. To our viewers as well, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Goodbye.